So we are going to do a little bit different. So we're going to go ahead and take a stab at this first question. I was able to sit in some of the groups, so two of the groups, only two groups, and hear what people are saying. And it was really insightful to hear what everybody was saying. And what was common to both groups was a comment of, well, it depends on who's correcting me. Okay, that was a comment that came up in both groups. Well, it depends on who's correcting me will help dictate like how I respond to their correction. And so when we look at the gospel, or not the gospel, but the book of Galatians, and the whole premise of the book is that Christ has freed us, okay, and brought us into and is cultivating a relationship with us. And so when we think about that process of being cultivated into a relationship with Jesus Christ, clearly, whenever my character and my being is put in contrast with Jesus, we're going to be able to highlight some differences, okay? I'm going to see his absolute goodness, and I'm going to see my not-so-goodness, all right? So when we're looking at the book of Galatians, and this question was to kind of, have us think about like, okay, well, when we step into this relationship with Jesus Christ, clearly there's going to be some sort of correction that comes. But how do we respond to the correction of Christ? Because I'm sure Christ has hinted at me, just like he's probably hinted at you, that certain things need to change. But have we always responded to Christ in a positive way to the things or the areas in our life that he wants us to change? Have we always been like, oh yeah, Jesus, I want to change that right now? Or sometimes we can be very resistant to him. Our resistance to what Jesus is telling us and how he wants to change us and how he wants us to grow, like how we respond to that, we can get a sense based on how we respond to feedback from other people, okay? Because we all receive feedback at some point, but how do we respond to the feedback? And so if we want to understand like how we respond to Christ, okay, maybe let's look at the feedback that we get from other people. And so our growth is always a dynamic process, which is why the process of feedback is so important in life. But to grow from that feedback that we get as an individual, it takes a lot of introspection. It takes a lot of constant self-evaluation to continue to grow based on the feedback that you get from others. We really know that there are people who are so stubborn. Stubborn people, do they do well with feedback? Not really. They don't want to change. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They're kind of set in their ways. In their own way, they're like, what I do is right. What I do is right. And I'm okay with what I do. So how do we kind of look at these two? Like somebody who wants to grow versus somebody who is stubborn in growth. All right? And I think if we kind of look at these two, personalities a little bit more, you'll find that somebody who is maybe a little bit stubborn or resistant to growth tends to be a more task-oriented person. Okay? I want to do the task. When I get the task done, I'm good. All right? Versus somebody who is more goal-oriented. All right? So a goal-oriented person is somebody who would aim for like excellence. Like they're working on a project. They know the project isn't going to go that well, but what their ultimate goal is excellence. So what are they going to do? They're going to be more receptive to the feedback that they're getting throughout the project, all right, throughout the process. But in order to be receptive to that feedback, they have to have like space in life in order to think about the feedback, process the feedback, internalize it, and understand how you're going to change from that. Versus people who are very task-oriented. They get the task done. You give them, well, I think you could have done it this way. And what do you get? It's done. Like, why are we bringing it up? Why are we talking about it? Okay? They're not as receptive to the feedback that they get And the feedback is aiming towards the growth of whatever they're doing, all right? I'll give you an example of this with myself. When it comes to grocery shopping, I'm very task-oriented, all right? I get a list, all right, or I make a list. I get what is on the list. I may add it in, all right? But I will go and I will get what is on the list, all right? And you know when you go to the grocery store, like you go to buy ketchup, there's 1,000 different bottles of ketchup, okay? You go to buy a vegetable, there's a couple different kinds, all right? You go to buy toothpaste, and it's like a wall of toothpaste, all right? So what do you, like for me, what do? I'm very task-oriented. I go to the toothpaste aisle, I look at the toothpaste, I was like, I like the box in this one, all right? I choose it. Task done. Versus somebody who is goal-oriented, meaning I want to go grocery shopping, but I want to do it the best way possible. These are the people, you walk into the grocery aisle, they're standing down, and they're looking at the unit price, okay? They're getting like, well, how much do I get with this one, and how much do I get with this one? And then they turn the box over, and they look at the ingredients, and like, this one has more sugar, this one has less sugar, this one has more protein. What do they want? They want to get the best deal, or not the best deal, but they want the best food. So they're willing to spend time, they're willing to evaluate, they're willing to take it beyond just, this is a task that I need to get done, okay? And ultimately, that person walks out of the grocery store with a much better grocery cart, okay? They probably got better deals, they probably got healthier things. Why? Because they were goal-oriented, not task-oriented. But when it comes to our own spiritual development, sometimes we like to be task-oriented versus goal-oriented, all right? Task-oriented means like, all right, I know I need to read my Bible, I know I need to pray, I know I need to attend liturgy, and every so often I know I should probably confess, all right? Sometimes we become very task-oriented in our approach to our spirituality, versus we need to be goal-oriented in our spirituality, which is understanding that in this relationship, God is going to have feedback. God is going to give us different points. God is going to say, you were doing this, but I want you to change, and I want you to grow, and I want you to start doing this. The goal-oriented person sees that, all right, I want an intimate relationship. Therefore, when I receive feedback from God, I will take time to deal with it. And dealing with the feedback from God is a lot of times messy, and a lot of times throws you off, and you don't know, like, how do I navigate this? How do I deal with this discontent feeling that I have in my heart? I need to work through it. But it takes time. It takes prayer. It takes, using different tools at our disposal that we have within the church to work through the different problems. But somebody who is goal-oriented on this relationship and not task-oriented in the relationship will be receptive to what God is saying. God has a goal of spiritual intimacy with us. God desires deep spiritual intimacy with us. And deep spiritual intimacy is not always clear-cut. It's not always clear on how we're going to have deep spiritual intimacy, but God is always focused on that, and He wants us to be focused on that goal too. He wants a real relationship, not a robotic relationship. And so, in His desire for spiritual intimacy with us, God sheds light on a lot of things that light needs to be shed on. God sheds light on a lot of things in our life that need light to be shed on. And the things that He sheds light on are oftentimes messy and painful to deal with, and can't be quickly dealt with by a task. All right? They need us to engage in a relationship. And the goal is to have a transformative relationship. And so, the goal aspect of the relationship of having that spiritual intimacy, like we're saying, is a bit messy. It's not so clear-cut, versus when we approach our relationship with God and we want to make it task-oriented. We want everything that God is going to tell us to fit into the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in my spiritual life. But a lot of times, we may uncover something through the 1, 2, 3 steps in our spiritual life, but it requires us to go a little bit deeper. But going deeper is more difficult than staying task-oriented with God. And St. Paul, in verses 2 and 3, he said, "This is what I want to hear from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish, having begun in the Spirit, that you now are being made perfect in the flesh?" What St. Paul is saying here is, look, when you started this relationship with God, when you first heard about Him, you heard about Him, somebody was talking to you, you heard about it, you thought about it, you felt the message, you prayed about the message, and then you walked into a relationship with God. And there weren't we didn't have a clear-cut set of guidelines for you to walk through the relationship. You walked out of faith. You walked because you felt you were being drawn in a certain direction. Your heart was moving you in a certain direction. But now all of a sudden, along the way, the relationship got a little bit messy. It was hard to understand God at certain points. The feedback that He was giving us was a little bit difficult at times. And so instead of hanging in there in the relationship, we've now resorted to, well, let me do 1, 2, and 3 with God, and I'll be okay. I'm going to explain this a little bit more through a little analogy. It's July 4th. You're all invited to my house. Okay? Some of you may know how to get there, some of you may not. Pretend you all don't know how, and you're all visitors here in Baltimore. Okay? There's probably 2 ways for you to get to my house. I can give you my address, okay, and a set of directions, and you can follow the directions. It's probably easier for most of you. You have control. You know when you want to leave, you know how you're going to get there, you're self-sufficient on how to get there. Versus, you're all here and I tell you, come on over, follow me. Follow me. What does that require? It requires I get in my car, you get in your car. I didn't give you directions. I didn't give you my address. I said, follow me. So what do you have to do? You drive behind me. All right? And you have a choice to make. Do you keep your eyes on me? Or you decide, I'm going to get there a different way. If you want to get to my house, you keep your eyes focused on the car in front of you. All right? It takes a bit of trust. You have to trust me that I know how to get to where I'm going. You have to trust me that I know how to get to my house. And so you stand in the car, you drive in the car behind me, and you trust that I'm going to lead you in the right way, and you stay focused on where my car goes. If I go right, you go right. If I go left, you go left. And if I make a U-turn, you make a U-turn. And you may look and say this doesn't make sense. We just made 3 U-turns, okay? But I'm going to trust in this relationship. Somewhere along the lines in our relationship with God, we lose a bit of trust. We want God to hand us the directions. Why? So we can have control. So I can, start the journey when I want to, start the journey. I can turn left, when this tells me to turn left. But what happens in that, scenario when I start to do that with God is I lose focus on the relationship. God says, I want you to follow me. I want you to trust in me. I want you to stay focused on me. But sometimes we tell Him, no, give me the directions. And I'll do it on my own. I'll figure out my own way there. One of the things that was plaguing the Galatians was that though they started the relationship following God like they were in the car behind, somewhere along the lines, somebody came along and said, look, this is how you get there, here's the directions. And they said, okay, I don't need to follow, I don't need to trust as much, and I can do it on my own. Let me take the directions, and I'll do it. The relationship became task-oriented. I do 1, 2, and 3, and I'm good to go. I don't need to think about it much more than that. But God is saying, when you started this relationship, it was a relationship of trust. It was a relationship of faith. You need to keep your eyes focused on me. Don't think that you can revert back and start to do things on your own way. And so St. Paul was addressing that with the Galatians. And he called them foolish for thinking that what they started in faith, following after God, they can now accomplish by certain laws. You know, when we look at faith, who was the greatest example of faith apart from Jesus Christ? It was Abraham. He was our father of faith. When we look at the story of Abraham, when Abraham walked with God, did he know everything he needed to do? No. He didn't have a rule book. The law of Moses hadn't been invented. All right? It hadn't been delivered. Abraham was told, come, follow me, I'll make you a nation. What did he need? He needed trust and he needed focus. He needed a constant communication with God. Did it get messy at times? Yes. Was it unclear at times? Sure. But Abraham hung in there in the relationship. And we see the proof that Abraham hung in there in the works that he did, in the life that he lived. We see it coming out in his actions, in his belief, in his trust. And the Bible, throughout the Bible, continued to refer to Abraham as a father of faith. And eventually Abraham got a sign that sealed the proof of his faith, which was circumcision. All right? Circumcision came after Abraham proved that he was faithful. All right? What would have happened if Abraham got circumcision before he showed his faithfulness? Could we necessarily say that Abraham was a man of faith if he just got circumcised? God said, Abraham, come this way, I'm going to circumcise you. Would we call him a father of faith? No, there has to be the substance of faith in order to get the sign of faith. All right, circumcision was a sort of sign of faith. To get it before walking by faith is essentially like getting a tattoo with no meaning behind it, thinking it was a good idea. Because then people ask you like, oh, why'd you get the tattoo? He's like, I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. Like, there's no story behind it versus somebody else, like you ask them, like, what's behind your tattoo? And they give you, like, at least a substantive story behind it as to why they got this tattooed on their body. You look, you're like, that makes sense. That was foolish. All right? Abraham showed his faith, and as a sign of his faith, then came circumcision. It wasn't the other way around. And likewise, with God, God is looking for a relationship of faith, not a relationship built on the 1, 2, 3, 4, like a checklist, a spiritual checklist. Okay? Don't get me wrong. The spiritual checklist and the guidelines and the rule for our life is essential. Okay? These are important. But they never take over the relationship of faith. They're there to help it grow. All right? So with that, we're going to move on to the second question. And you're going to gather in your groups. We're going to say, question 2, many Christians fall into the trap of keeping a personal law as a means of finding God's approval. Can you see this pattern in your life? How can you counteract it and begin to live by God's grace? So take a couple minutes and discuss question 2 in your groups, and then we'll come back around and talk. We'll cap off. We're not going to get to question 3, but I'll just kind of share something quick about it. So it seems like our question was, many Christians fall into the trap of keeping a personal law as a means of finding God's approval. Can you see this pattern in your life, and how can you counteract it and begin to live by God's grace? So I mostly heard a little discussion from this group, but it seems like to some extent we all probably carry some sort of spiritual rule, okay, that we try and walk by for our spiritual life, which is important. There's fruit to that, okay? But What about the days, and I overheard it like over here, it's like, what about the days where I don't feel like I fit into my normal routine? Like, what do I do with that? Okay? And this is, like, we shared this at one point when we were talking about a spiritual rule during one of our workshops and also during the prayer series, that the spiritual rule that we have in our lives is important, but it functions off of two key components, but I'm really just going to mention one, which is flexibility. Okay? Meaning that our spiritual rules, or what this question is hinting at, our personal laws, all right, are good for us and they help us stay on track for growth and to be intentional in our relationship with God, but they have to be flexible. They have to grow with us, okay? Not enclose us from growing with God, because there are times where God is challenging us in different ways where we will find that our spiritual rules become outdated. They don't work because God is challenging us and bringing us into a deeper relationship with Him. And when that happens, our spiritual rule must grow with it. But something like if we think that our personal law or our spiritual rule is what's important, we'll keep it at all cost. Okay? Even though I'm not here, I'm not present with God, this is what I'm going to do and that's it. And when I'm done, I'm going to go on with my day. We've missed the beauty of it. We've misused it. Okay? But in order to understand that there are times where we have to step out of our rules and grow, requires that we be in this relationship with God, that we are attuned to what He's saying. We're attuned to how we feel. And when we're attuned to what He's saying, and when we're attuned to how we feel, all right, we know that we need to adjust things. Maybe today, I do put aside my Bible, okay? But I do something else with it. Why? Because I know that something else is going to bring me into that relationship with God. That's important. That's being goal-oriented in our relationship with God. And the goal being intimacy with God, not to let me just make sure I get all my ducks in order and do 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to be fine. No, it's about using those things, but at a point when God takes us beyond them to grow in that direction, to mature with God. I'm going to modify things a little bit, and I want to jump to this verse in John, all right, which is the gospel of the first hour of Bea. And in John 1, verse 12 and 13, John says, "But as many as received Him, to them He gave the right to become children of God, those who believed in His name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." These are people who cultivated an intimate relationship with God, that it wasn't based on their own willpower, it wasn't based on what they were able to accomplish. It was based on this belief in Him, trust in the relationship, and growth in the relationship, which isn't always clear-cut at times. It's a little bit messy. All relationships are a little bit messy at times. But as many as received Him, to them He gave the right to become children of God. He guided them along the way. Question 3, which I'm going to summarize, all right, seems very natural to us to think that we have earned our approval from God. It feels right on a deep level. Does it seem reasonable to come to God empty-handed with nothing to commend yourselves to Him and trust that He will accept you because of your faith in Christ? How easy is that for you? That's the question. You can wrestle on it if you'd like. But I want to just touch on the last part of Galatians chapter 3, which then the whole question is, well, what was the point of the Mosaic Law? Okay? If it seems like it's causing more confusion than benefit, what was the point of the law? Why did God give the law to the Israelites? What purpose did the law serve? And that's the question that St. Paul posed back to them. And what St. Paul was saying is that the law was needed in order to give contrast, okay? Which contrast is essential to gaining perspective, all right? In a relationship, okay, when you found the one that you want to marry, okay, what made that person stand out? You've seen other people, okay, you've seen the personalities and the characteristics of other people, but somewhere along the line, this person stood out, okay? You kind of needed perspective and contrast of different personalities in order for you to look at the one person that you wanted to marry and say, this person stands out. The law kind of provides that contrast. Contrast of what it is to live as a people of God versus people who are living without God. The law kind of taught the Israelites at the time before Jesus Christ on what are the building blocks of this relationship with God. What should we do? What shouldn't we do? It kind of served as what St. Paul called a tutor. All right? But before faith came, we were kept under guard by the law, kept for the faith which would afterward be revealed. Therefore, the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. So the law, I kind of look at it it's like bowling with bumper lanes. All right? It helped protect us from going into the gutters. All right? But it didn't always guarantee that we got a strike. All right? So the law served as bumpers for the people of Israel. It was important. It made sure that they didn't go off way in right field or way in left field. It kind of kept them somewhere in the right direction, but it was insufficient, which is why Jesus Christ had to come. All right? And the purpose was never to have us live completely under the law, because, as it was stated in Galatians and otherwhere, the law couldn't make us perfect. That could only come through Jesus Christ and His sacrifice for us. And so when Jesus Christ came, and He died, He fulfilled the law, He died and He rose, He freed us from the responsibilities, from the requirements of the law. All right? But what He brought us into was an intensely personal relationship with Him. And if we feed that relationship, which when we approach our relationship with God, we need to be more goal-oriented rather than task-oriented. We need to look at this relationship and see, well, what are my goals in this relationship? If my goal is to be intimately connected, then I need to communicate, or the way I communicate with God is in these ways, okay? Which is different from the person next to me. And I'm not going to look at the person next to me and be like, oh, this is how they do it. I'm going to take their set of laws and put it on my life. It doesn't work like that. When our goal is to be intimate and personal with God, our relationship will be formed with Him based on that. And it's going to take a lot of faith. Because remember, we're in the car behind God. God is driving, and in order to stay focused, to stay behind Him and to get to our destination, it requires trust and it requires faith. That He knows where He's leading us. And we need to learn to incorporate those into our lives and not to just easily satisfy ourselves by following our very spiritual rules. Know that the spiritual rules that we set are there to help us, but not there to contain us and to trap us. They must grow as we grow. That's all I'm going to say for today, so we can end on time. Any questions? All right, let's stand up and pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Thank you, Lord, for everything you've given to us. Thank you for this day. We ask, Lord, that you continue to guide us, that we would be courageous to follow you into unknown territory. That we would desire to continually grow with you, using the tools that we have around us, but knowing that our goal isn't to just use the tools that we have to be in this relationship with you, but to use them truly as tools that allow us to grow closer to you. And when we fast, Lord, its purpose is to purge us from all our selfishness, Lord, help us to use all that's around us in order to grow with you in this relationship. And when it doesn't always make sense, Lord, we trust in you to continue to lead us as long as we stay focused on it. Through the intercessions of all your saints, we please you from the beginning years as we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Christ is our Lord, and thine is the kingdom. Now the love of God, the Father, the grace of His only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, and with His Holy Spirit, be with you all in peace. The Lord be with you.